All right, and welcome to the show. We have
Hello.
Thursdays with the therapist, but on Sunday.
On
And
Sunday, we do not discriminate. We take all the days.
exactly. And the name of today's show is the importance of acknowledging mental illness. And we have the wonderful Dr. Christina. Oh, I'm sorry, I keep
Oh,
saying doctor.
I would
It's a
love that.
nickname, people, nickname. But we have Christina with
Yes.
us, and she's gonna be taking us down that rabbit hole. So we
Yeah.
can start wherever you want to.
Okay. So, I'm thinking a lot about the stigma of mental illness, and being a school psychologist for almost 25 years and a licensed mental health counselor or therapist since 2005 or 6, something like that. I kind of cringe when I hear the words mental illness
Okay.
because I'm in the field, right? And it still conjures up a very specific image in my head. And although I know that knee-jerk image is not what the two words mental illness means, I can't imagine what it conjures up for other people who aren't in the field. For me, when people say, mental illness, I'm thinking, the psych ward, the institution, you've lost your mind, you're crazy, you're out of control. And yes, there are times with people that does happen. But when we talk about mental illness and breaking the stigma of mental illness and getting help for mental illness, we're not talking about that kind of illness. We're talking about more of like emotional duress. That's what we're
Right.
talking about. So I think it's always important, no matter who you're talking to, family, friend, significant other. I have clients, people. You always want to make sure you're talking about the same thing because a lot of times you could have a conversation with somebody and you're really not even on the same page of what you're talking about. I was talking to a parent in my district about her child who was getting evaluated, and we were talking about possibilities of what would happen after the meeting we were going to have. And she kept saying, well, it's not special ed, right? It's not special ed, right? And I know that she's nervous. It's your child, right? So I know she's nervous about special ed, but I'm telling her, yeah, it's all special ed. This service is special ed, that service is special ed, but it's not special ed. So I had to stop the conversation. I had to say, Miss So and so, I'm not sure we have the same definition of what special education is.
Right.
And I want to make sure, and she fought me a little bit, like she didn't want to really talk about it. I said, no. I want to go through with you because I want to know, what do you think special education is? Because you may be upset about something that you don't have to be upset about. Like, let me impart some knowledge to you. Let me explain to you what all this means. So then, as it turns out, she was in special education when she was younger. And, 20, 15, 30 years ago, special education looked very different than it does in the schools.
Right.
So we want to explain, we want to make sure, what are we talking about, right? So if I'm saying, have you tried talking to a therapist? Have you reached out to a counselor? And someone's like, I'm not mentally ill. I wonder what they're conjuring up, in their brain. Like, what do they really think it is? Because I have to tell you, if we're really talking about mental illness as like duress and things like that, I don't think there's one person who has not had some mental illness from one time or another.
Right. Yeah.
Including myself. Including myself.
Yeah. I think that stigma it gets people like in almost in quicksand mentally
Yep.
because even when I was seeking treatment for what I deal with, which is bipolar 2 disorder. When I first heard it, I said this many times. I got left out of the lady's office at the suggestion of it, and so it was like, nah, because I had my stepmother who is paranoid schizophrenic, and that the symptoms of what she deal with automatically came into my mind, and it was like, nah, that ain't, even though some of those symptoms I could relate to, I still didn't want to deal with that. And so,
because that's so unpleasant. It's like, no, I'm not that. I'm not going to look at that. I'm not anything like that, whatever that is, because it's scary, and as human beings, we have a natural, and it's a natural inclination to want to control what happens to us, right? And who we are and what we do. And when we have to reveal ourselves to a stranger, right, the therapist or the counselor, it seems very out of control. It seems very unnatural, because we don't go up to strangers in the street and start talking about our personal business. It's very different. It has a different kind of mechanism, the way it works. But so I kind of delved deeper, and I wanted to just get some common language. So I didn't even think of it this way. And it's so cool to research things, because even if you think, first of all, if you're at a point where about a topic, that's when you really don't know as much as you can about the topic. You get very humble. And, the brain is where mental illness, or mental stress comes from. Okay. Your brain is an organ. Hello, Dre.
What's up? How do I sound?
You sound good.
All right, good. That's what's up. I'll let y'all
you
do
sound
what
like Andre the voice.
Andre the voice. That's awesome. So,
yo, what's going on?
Not much. So we're talking about Andre. So, we're talking about how, your brain is an organ, right? And I never even thought of it like that. Like, I'm thinking your brain is your brain, and your organs are your heart, your liver, your lungs, your kidneys, your whatever, right? Your brain is an organ like your liver, like your heart, like your gallbladder. It's the same thing. That's why it's so hard to delineate the physical and mental, emotional aspects of mental illness, as well as, it makes sense, even more sense. That's why when you are going through something, they give you experts, professionals will give you things to do that will deal with you emotionally and mentally. But they're like, have you gotten outside? Have you gone for a walk? Have you gotten any vitamin D? Have you exercised? Have you done something you like? What kind of food are you eating? Is it nutrient dense food? Is it just, crappy carbohydrates, like the ups and the downs of the sugar? It's like you approach it from all ends. So I feel like if we can, get the word out of like, listen, your brain is an organ, and it goes through things like anything else. And because of your life circumstances, your brain can get injured. Your brain can be in pain, just like your heart can, just like your lungs can, just like your kidneys can. You get a UTI, or you get.
Oh, you're talking about like that book me and you love, The Brain Never Forgets.
Oh yeah, the body keeps the score. That's right. That's right. We're talking about like the stigma of mental health. And something else I want to say too is, stigma is related to when I looked that up, it's like stigma, stereotype, prejudice, right? It's all kind of in the same pot.
Right.
So who decides when something's a stigma? Like, who does that? Well, it's like, well, who writes the history books? The people who win, right?
Right.
So it's the people who aren't going through this saying, I don't have this thing, you have this thing, and it's not a good thing. But meanwhile, like I said, there is not one person who who I know of, including myself, during a stressful period of time, has not been considered to have some kind of a mental illness. And I don't mean an illness that you can't function correctly for the rest of your life and you have to be institutionalized. That's really not what it is. I wish there could be a better term for it.
So it's almost like the difference between having a STD and a STI, right? You remember how they switched everything from STDs to STIs once
What
they
is an
realized
STI again?
a sexual transmitted infection in
Ah,
comparison to a sexual transmitted disease.
because you can cure the infection,
Correct.
but the disease stays with you. But even further, you can live with that disease.
Right.
You can live. People living stage 4 lung cancer. People are living with congestive heart failure.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just. I mean, listen. If you had a choice, you'd opt not to have it.
Right.
But it gives this connotation in your head that you have no control, and people will judge you, and they'll judge you negatively. The problem is that if we don't seek help, right? If we don't communicate how we're feeling, all that duress and stress, it comes out anyway. Like, you're not fooling anybody.
Right.
It comes out in your treatment of yourself. It comes out in the treatment of others.
Right.
It further it's like a wound you don't take care of. Like, you cut your hand, right? And it just festers, and it ges worse. It's like, well, I'm not, I'm choosing not to put any antibiotic lotion on it. Okay, cool. But like, it's getting worse and worse.
It's funny that y'all kind of brought up STIs and STDs because, like you said, it's diseases that you can live with,
of course,
and if you treat it right. And it's kind of like that with the mental health. Like, if you have a certain STD and you're not treating it, and you're not telling people this is what I'm living with and this is what I deal with, you endanger those people depending on the relationship.
That's right.
And it's the same thing with mental health. If you dealing with mental health and you don't address it, like, imagine a man or a woman marrying someone and then not telling them that they deal with bipolar 1 or 2 or borderline personality, that type of thing.
Right.
So, and then they have to find that out as the marriage progresses. Now you put them in a sticky situation because they took vows, but they didn't have all the information, and that's the same. It's kind of the same thing. It could be a dangerous or traumatic situation either way it goes.
Right. And then if right, and listen, we 99.9% of the people, everyone's doing the best they can with what they have, right? So they may refuse certain treatments and interventions, not because they don't want to get better, but because they're afraid, right? And they have misinformation or lack of information. But what that does is, then let's say it's a parent, and now the parent is acting in certain ways and doing certain things and interacting in ways, and it's not healthy for their children. So now their children are growing up with that dynamic when really it could have been averted. But we're going against, listen, anything mental illness was talked about being, back in the day, possessed. You have the mark of a demon. Even the word, stigma comes, it comes from stigmata, with Christ in his hands. And, it's never a positive. There's no positive stigma, I don't think. If anyone knows of one, let me know. But, when I hear stigma, I think negative, so, there are many different types, and I wanted to kind of, list it, like mental illness, is considered a lot of things. It can be schizophrenia. It could be borderline personality disorder. It could be anxiety disorder, clinical depression, autism, all different types of things. Now, but many people, most people go through an emotionally and mentally hard time in their life, even if they were diagnosed with an anxiety disorder or clinical depression or bipolar, that doesn't mean they're not functioning. That doesn't mean anybody's locking them up. That means they have this situation that's going on in their brain, which happens from life, which can happen from the stress of life also. So, and that makes changes on us, because think about it. When you take medication, when you take I'll just say for this sake, an antidepressant, anti-anxiety, which is almost, many are combined, right? You can get separate ones, but many are combined. What it's supposed to do, and I'm not a medical doctor, but as far as I know, what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to like kickstart your brain back into releasing those neurotransmitters and those things that keep us calm and happy, that have been like stopped due to the depression and the anxiety. So they say when you take medicine, let's say you're 2-3 months in, you're like, oh, I feel great, I'm gonna stop. No, because it probably takes about a year, the last time I looked at the research, for the medication to produce that good effect on the brain. So if the medication is helping the brain to do what it's supposed to do, that it stopped doing, like something must have made it stop in the first place. So it was stress, it was trauma, it was, the pressures of society, the community you live in, the current political, state that we're in, the pandemic. It just exacerbated everything, you know. Um, and a lot of information is out there to seek help for mental health. I mean, texting therapy. When I was trained, well, we didn't even text when I was younger, but we had a pager. But anyway, I'm not that old, but still. I told Andre I'm going to bring back the pager. But anyway,
we should.
Yeah, right. He's like, please don't do that. So, there's all different types of help, and what that really is connection. That's what that counseling is. That's what that therapy is, because you feel like you can't share what you're about to somebody, whether it's to anyone, whether it's to certain people, or even admitting it to yourself. You're connecting. A friend of mine, very big in the substance abuse, treatment department. We don't, an author, Gabor Mate, this famous substance abuse, author. We don't have a drug problem in the country. In the world, we have a connection problem. People want to connect. So that's a lot of what therapy or counseling can do. It can give you a point of connection, of validity. Like, yeah, someone's listening to you and saying, this is really hard. No wonder you're feeling this way. And I know that sounds silly, but it's very, very, very powerful. The greatest indicator and there are research-based therapeutic treatments, right, that you can follow more than others, that work to help us with our thinking, our mood, or our emotions, our feelings, and our behaviors, right, to improve and get the best quality of life. But what is most important is your connection with your therapist. If you have a connection with that person, that's the crux of the treatment. If you feel that you can bond with them.
Let me ask you something, because and this, of course, is national news, but an individual like Kanye West, with all the madness that we seeing from him, what would you do? Do you think he has a therapist and he just is neglecting that relationship, or do you think that because we know Kanye comes with a certain amount of arrogance, do you think he even sought to get help?
I don't know the particulars with Kanye West about, if he sought help, if he didn't. what types of help. I'm going to guess, just based on the little that I know, and I could be very wrong. So if there's any fact checkers out there, they can set me straight. I'm thinking he sought help. I'm thinking he seeks help. I'm thinking he seeks other types of help. I remember seeing him doing this like light therapy, like this light healing or sound healing. You know, I think he has been on medication. He has talked about feeling depressed after his mom died. Tragically, unexpectedly. But please know this: like we don't have it's like a mom or a dad, right? Once you reach a certain age, you can't make your children do anything. It's like anytime you see someone in celebrity, right? They do something, they say something, they wear something, they act a certain way, and you're like, is there no one in their staff that said, don't do that, don't say that, don't act like that, why did you make that statement? That's not what you need to be saying, right? Maybe there are people, maybe they surround themselves with, people that say, yes, 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 you're amazing. And maybe there are people that say no, but that doesn't mean they're going to follow it. So I think that, I think it's a struggle, and his celebrity, makes it all the more a struggle, I would think that he'd be a person that would have help handed to him. I don't think he would lack for any way of help, whether it's take this vitamin, take this medicine, stand on your head 2 minutes a day. That'll help. Like all different types of practitioners, ultimately people are going to be who they're going to be, and they're going to change when they feel that they want to change, if that makes sense. Or they want to change, they don't know how, and they go to someone to help, and they're compliant. But that's hard, because that's scary, because it's less scary for him to be outrageous than to change, because then what is he without all that outrageousness? Now you're different.
Right.
And he doesn't know it, and no one knows what that looks like. You know what I mean? Like, okay, cool. If I'm not going to be anxious, that's great. Then what do? I don't even know what to do. What do I do at this time? How do I start thinking? What do I need? So, that's hard. The unknown is very scary. Looking at yourself, and your pain is, very scary. A lot of people, get through, mental health issues on their own. But I always feel like, why do you have to white knuckle it so much? You know what I mean? Why do you have to walk through all the broken glass? Like maybe some of the broken glass, but then step off to the side. You don't have to walk all through that.
I think that it kind of depends on what's at stake. And I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
My cousin, not my cousin, but my neighbors, was just telling me about a situation with his son's wife, so his daughter-in-law. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't help but laugh, because I've heard similar stories, and it's like a person is at the last line and they still succumb to this mental block. But his wife, his son's daughter-in-law had gotten behind on her car payments. Mm-hmm. And usually his son would just come home, hey, here, take care of the bills, let's have a happy life. And she was doing that, but then he noticed that he was getting disconnection notices and stuff like that. And he's like, hey, I've been giving you, the money to take care of this. What's going on? And she, I don't know. So he went to his dad, who's my neighbor, to ask for his advice. And he was like, well, you just start paying the bills. If you can't, if you don't trust that she's taking care of business, you do it. Mm-hmm. And so instead of giving her the money, he started paying, the mortgage and the utilities and all of this. Well, he noticed that she stopped driving her car, and she started driving, like a van that he would use for work sometimes, just kind of like a third vehicle in case they needed it, type of thing. And he was like, "What's going on with your truck?" "Oh, it needs this and needs that." And he's like, "Well, let's just take care of it, you know."
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to bother you, blah blah blah. So he was kind of like, "Okay, that's." I mean, I don't know why we wouldn't just take care of it, but she said something about the warranty and some other excuses.
Mm-hmm.
So this went on for almost a year, and where she would drive it sometimes, and then for the most part she wouldn't. And a guy comes to their house, and he answers the door, and he's like, "How can I help you?" He's there to pick up the vehicle.
Oh man.
And he's like, "What are you talking about?" So he calls his wife in, and he's telling her, "Hey, this man said he's coming to get your truck. What's going on?" The man is there to pick up her truck, and she continues to tell her husband that she's been making her payments.
Yep.
Right to his face. And he's like, so he stops her. They're in the driveway. The man is about to take the vehicle. And he says, "Listen, just tell me the truth.
Right.
And I'll get you as close to as I can till where we get this thing caught up." She continued to lie up until letting them take the vehicle. And I brought that up because when I say it depends on what's at stake, people lie for the craziest reasons, and it's like a mental block goes up. She could have had her car. Yeah. He was willing to help her get as close to being caught up as he could, and she could not force herself to tell the truth.
And I have to say, I'm going to go out on a limb, right? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people are going to think I'm a fool, but I don't think she was even trying to be disrespectful to him as she's insisting. I really, in my heart, maybe I'm too sappy. She just was with that store. Like, that is just there in her head. Exactly. There was nowhere to go. That's we're just going to deny that.
Yeah, she had to jump out of the windows. She had took it so far. She had no choice.
That's
right. And I remember I was in a similar situation, unfortunately. And I'm caught red-handed. And my father and I have the same name. Mm-hmm. And instead of just coming to, "Hey, yeah, this was the situation, let me explain," I was like, "Oh, that's for my father." "What, coming to my house? Like, what do you mean? It's for your yeah, it's for my father." Mm-hmm. "Oh, it's got your social." Yeah, he gave him my name because he,
right. Just what right.
Don't worry about it. It's for Pop. Just not wanting to deal with the consequences of what was going to come behind me admitting the truth.
Right.
So I've been there. I was a lot younger than the individual we're talking about, but I figured out that these type of scenarios have nothing to do with age sometimes, though.
No, they don't. And it has to do with it can have to do with the type of coping skills you have. Like if the coping skill you have is to procrastinate and not deal with something and not look at it when it really starts to blow up in front of you, you don't start to look at it. It just, your behavior of ignoring it just seems crazier, because everything's exploding all around you. And you're like, what do you mean? Like, this didn't happen. It's like, no, it's right there, but people are, they're going to stick to the story. And it's like, well, what were you thinking would come after? They didn't think that far, because they get just caught up in that dynamic. They can't see a way out, unless you're dead. I think there's pretty much always a way out of something, and if you can't talk to your loved ones, which makes sense because you may not want to talk to the ones you love about some delicate things, you can talk to somebody else who is not going to have an attachment like, "Are you crazy? You didn't pay that bill." Like, even if they're supportive, it's in the moment. You're like, "Well, what are you doing with the money? Where are you?" They're not emotionally monetarily invested. Also, when we tell, someone that loves us, that we're not feeling great, emotionally, whatever, oh, it's okay, just you need to get out a little bit, you'll be fine, don't worry about that, because they don't want to see us suffer. But
Right.
don't worry about that. Yeah, great. I thought of that myself. Like, don't be sad. Like, fantastic. Like, how do I do that? You know what I mean? Like, I went through something. I'm a therapist. I have every book of every technique and every connection of every person, of every therapist. Nothing helped me except for medicine at that time. And then I was able to receive the help from the other techniques because my brain chemistry at that point was level.
Yeah.
At that time, I tell Andre, I have this story. I don't know if I told DMJ. Andre, remember the raccoon story? So I had this. So I was going through some different stuff in my life, lots of changes. Perimenopause started for me, which basically was not hot flashes. It was like acne, and I, felt like my mom was my mom was dying 3 times a week. Like, that's how bereft I was. So sad, so sad. So I'm driving to work one day, and I'm on the phone with my Aunt Linda, who is awesome, my mom's sister, who calls me every morning. And I cry all the time. I have a lump in my throat. I'm depressed. I'm functioning. I'm going to work. I'm getting dressed. I couldn't eat. People said, "Oh my God, how good you look." I'm like, I think I'm dying. Like, I can't eat, whatever. And it's so skinny. But anyway, so she's like, "How are you?" And I'm crying. I'm like, there's a raccoon in the road. I'm on the Bethpage State Parkway. She's like, "Did you hit him?" I said, no, he was there. I said, he's lying there. She's like, "Okay." I'm sobbing, right? This is 8:00 in the morning. This is crazy. I said, he made a bad decision. He should have hurried, or he should have waited. Now he's dead. My aunt is like, "Oh my God." So my aunt's like, "All right, listen. And if you knew my aunt, you'd know, listen to me. Okay. Listen."
The aunt that talks like me.
Yes, the aunt that talks like you, Andre. She goes, "Listen, you don't know him. You don't know that raccoon." I'm like, "You're right, I don't know him. He's not your pet. I swear to God, he doesn't come to Christmas dinner, right? Listen, we love animals. We don't want to see them suffer, but you don't know this raccoon." I'm like, You're right. I don't know him." And she goes, "And the other thing, you have to understand that you have to wrap your brain around is right now, you're a little fucked up," she said. She said, "Because this is too much." I'm like, "I know, it's too much." Shortly thereafter, I was stubborn enough, even me as a mental health practitioner, and I went on medicine, and my life changed. But I have to say that was several years ago. But to this day, if I tell her, I'm feeling a little blah, she's like, "Yeah." So the gauge is, I'm not raccoon blah. Like, it's not the raccoon thing. It's we're not even there. It's regular blah. Okay, good. But I do this for a living, right? And I know medication will help you. I know making these changes will help you. I know communicating and talking will help you. I had every close friend of mine in the mental health profession saying to me, "What is wrong with you that you are not going to the psychiatric nurse practitioner, the psychiatrist? Why are you not going on medicine?
Right.
This is too far gone. You're not in a place, this." And I fought them. And I do this for a living because my thinking was off.
Right.
That's what happened. So you can't let me make that decision to not, because I'm not making a rational decision. I'm all emotion. I'm no rationality, no logic. That's why people don't get help. That's why people don't take medicine.
No, just
we're not doing the woman show tonight, Andre.
No, go ahead. I'm listening.
We're not doing the woman show tonight.
Go ahead.
But anyway, yeah, and as long as you say women, and for men, it's even a bigger stigma. You know, women are supposed to be like crying and depressed and hysterical, right? Like traditionally
100, yeah, 100%.
around history, you know, you don't want to see a man crying, you know, whatever, you know, even the women are like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like if it comes across as like this craziness. So men have a bigger, you know, pressure, stigma. Society looks down on them for
right. But let me ask you a
saying,
question.
I need help.
But let me ask you a question about
myself.
that, right? Let me ask you a question. If you had a man that every time something came up, he started crying, would you feel comfortable being under his arm?
I would, if I loved him and we're in this committed relationship, I'm going to be like, babe, we need to get some help. We need to get some help.
Right. Right. But okay, I get that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I feel what you're saying.
I would rise to the, I would be in my own head thinking I'm in, you know, this is my partner, right? I got to rise to the occasion and be like, all right, this is, you know, I'm the rational one here. And this is what we're going to try and do to get you help. Now, I can't make him get help. Right. And if it keeps going on and on, like, let's say, you know, it's ruining everybody's life. There may have to be a decision of, you know, listen, you know, I'm going to help you, but you know, everyone can't go down with you. You know what I'm saying? We can't do that either, but you're supposed to help. You're supposed to help the people you love. You're supposed to, but you can't make them get help, but you can talk with them. You can validate them. You can meet them where they are. It's this catchphrase, right? What are they thinking? What do they want? What do they want? What do they think they need? How can you help them with that? Okay, you want to try this, this, and this. Would you want to try that? Knowing that they can at least come to you. It's a process, starting to talk to you about these things. At least they know that's safe.
Right.
You know, that's what we can do, you know, to help those around us because, you know, by nature, some people more than others, but it's human nature. If I'm telling you to do something, you may be like, no, just because I'm telling you to do it. People get defiant.
Right. I think America, or as you said, society, culture, I mean, usually tears for a man is reserved at death or as some type of catastrophe, right? Like what do we, I could tell you the last time I cried was when my father died at the funeral though. I didn't cry. I didn't cry when he actually died because I made peace that I knew he was going the day he did die. But the day of the funeral, when I knew it was over, I cried. I cried, right?
Yeah.
So, but like I said, you know, if I lose a wife, I cry, you know, sometime. But
if she was a good wife.
Exactly. You know, but I feel like, I don't know. You know me. I'm the more empathetic type towards men and their tropes and their plights, right? Me and you talk about this on a daily basis with my man that I told you the other day.
Yeah.
I actually went to him and said, "Hey, what up, bro?" And he was like, "Nothing." And I was like, "This the same dude that was stalked me out to tell me some random stuff, but now I come to you to see how you doing, and it's like nothing." And I had to respect that, right? Like I told you. I mean, listen, the brain is a very intricate part of the body. I think it's a tool, right? And I think I always tell people, tap into that brain, right? If you tap into it, you never know. Like we tap into so many of the, I feel like the brain I think the brain itself, by it having two spheres in the brain, or the divisions of it, left side, right side, is almost like, and DMG, you know where I'm going with this, it's almost like esoteric versus esoteric, basically saying duality, good and evil, right? This is why they say the closest thing to a genius is a madman. Right, and the closest thing to a madman is a genius, right? So it's almost like, which part of the brain will you develop, and I think it's a form of duality, right? And especially if you can master the creative side and the analytical side, right? And maybe that's, I don't know. Could that be a mental illness? Think about that. And let me know if I'm popping at all with this mic, y'all.
You're a little staticky.
A little bit.
Jesus
a little
Christ.
A little, but you're not going in and out. You're just a little staticky.
If I'm staticky, I don't want to sound staticky. So how about now? Staticky.
Talk. Let me see.
Yeah, is it staticky now?
Yeah.
Jesus
Little
Christ.
bit.
A little bit.
All right, what about now?
Yes.
Jesus Christ. All right, so I'll turn it to this part. What about now?
Say something.
Yeah, what about now?
Yeah. Still.
Jesus. I don't know. So
Hey,
yeah,
you calling on Jesus even though you know he ain't coming.
yeah, I know. Hold on, Jesus.
Ooh,
There you go.
point,
How
damn
about the mic
That's
now?
why your mic is static.
Nah, you know what I learned? StreamYard and this expensive mic that I wasted all this money on do not get along. It's StreamYard. It gotta
It be like that, yeah. Sometimes StreamYard be tripping because
Because if you
sometimes I
think about it, when I'm on Facebook with this mic, it boom, right?
Look, Andre, these are my pearls from Mallorca, so I can clutch them when you say something
Right.
crazy.
And then, hold on. Is it good now, y'all?
Say it again.
Is it good now?
No, still staticky.
That's
you still just got them little pops.
Yeah,
and that's what's crazy because I have a pop filter. Hold on. But I'll say this and then I'll come back in. Like I said, so I think the brain itself is where man, I ain't gonna get too in my nerd stuff, but I would say when man was fascinated with certain things that had to do with philosophy, I think they use the brain as an actual diagram for duality, which is now in all of your religious books, right? Light, dark, left, right, good or bad, because it all resides within your head, right? And what you tap into. That's just a little conjecture on my end, but I think that's kind of like, because like I say, the closest, if you look at any like superhero stuff from back when we were kids, who was more genius than the Riddler? Who was more genius than the Joker?
Or Lex Luthor. Yeah.
Exactly.
Lex
right.
Luthor.
And what do they call them? The evil genius, right?
Evil genius.
I think that's something we
saying in because I'm a comic book geek. People actually say the Joker isn't really insane. He's I forgot the term. He's ultra sane instead of being insane. He's ultra
super logical,
sane.
right? Super logical, right?
Something like that. Yeah. So
I tell people all the time. Before the pandemic, I came in Batman. I was I ain't gonna say, was I? No, I wasn't a simp.
No,
I was recovering a simp. I was a recovering simp, and I was very like the good guy, and then I came out the Joker, and I love being the Joker. I do, because it just I'm able to talk to Christina. I'm able to talk to DMG.
I'm gonna call you the Batman who laughs. Is what would happen to Batman if Batman got exposed to the same stuff that the Joker got exposed
exactly.
to.
That's what I am. Batman who got exposed to reality.
Batman, though. He still got all of the brains of Batman. He just insane like the Joker. So but it's funny because when I that he said like the closest thing to a genius is a madman. I had an episode probably 3 weeks or so ago.
Okay.
And I think I sent my wife like 10 poems. And the crazy thing about these 10 poems is they probably the best poems I wrote. I actually wrote a poem personifying virginity. And I was like, I don't know how I even, but because I
was she like, oh, 10 poems, fantastic, we're having an episode, like was she on
knew,
that? Yeah.
she knew right out of the gate because I hadn't been sleeping, and she know when I'm not sleeping versus I may be having a little bit of insomnia, because when I'm having insomnia, I go to the basement, I play the game, put up, make some content for the channel, and then I fall asleep.
Right.
When I'm having an episode, it's different. I'm in the bathroom by myself, listening to music.
right.
At 4 o'clock in the morning, so 3 o'clock in the morning, stuff like that. So she was like, "What's going on?" Nothing. I'm good. Nothing. And then I write 10 poems and just inbox. What do you think of these? And I want to read all of them because I want to know.
Now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Forget that you're doing work in your capacity as a vice president of a company. Read these poems and tell me what you think right now.
Right.
So she's like, "Hey, did you skip a dose? Like what's going on?
Where are you at with your medicine? I'm just asking, right?
We need to talk." And then it was one of those things I think I had skipped, not on purpose, but just
It happens.
kind of got out of my routine.
That's right. That's
and she,
right.
she had to reel me back in. So that was one of the minor type of things.
Yeah.
But it's crazy how fast your mind started going.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to write a poem personifying. I think I wrote one as if I was envy, and then the other one was it just
right.
But they were actually good was the problem, and I was
yeah.
Oh damn. Okay.
Well, we talked about this before. That's why people, who are diagnosed with bipolar, and I don't like to say, and I fall into the habit also, I don't like to say people who are bipolar. You're not bipolar, you're DMG, you have a lot of characteristics, and one of them is having bipolar too. So people diagnosed with bipolar, a lot of times they don't want, after a while, it could be an issue of, because the highs are not as high, right? The lows are not as low, which is fantastic. We don't want that. But the highs, where all that creativity and that manic stuff comes from, can be blunted, right? But with that manic creativity, that awesomeness, comes that irrationality and that craziness. So you can't have one without the other. So just like when, getting back to Andre, as men, you have to keep your feelings in, but what happens is, and I'm thinking about someone I dated in particular, maybe it's just too anecdotal for me, too personal, but if you can't just blunt one feeling. Mm-hmm. If you're pushing down your feelings, you're not pushing down one of them. All of them are, right? Yep. So with bipolar, right? No, let's do clinical depression, right? I was diagnosed with clinical depression, perimenopause depression, right? Everything, the anxiety was lessened, the depression was lifted. I actually was like, I felt that freeness, right? But then if something was sad, I'm like, I think I feel like I want to cry about this, but I'm not crying. So it can blunt everything. Now I'll take that for not wishing that I want to die and not being able to sleep and jumping out of my own skin and crying for, random roadkill on the parkway, so it's a toss. It's a toss up. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, great. You're not writing these poems all the time, but you're also not going to be like homeless and crazy on the street, like not being able to function in society. So you'll take that.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and that's what it comes down to, making the choice to be, maybe I can still crank out a poem, but it's not at that accelerated rate. But we're putting the word out there. I want to put the word out where we want to put the word out there that there, like I said, this would be the third time, and I know, we're not supposed to be repeating ourselves. Not the greatest way to be on a podcast, but seriously, though, when it's needed,
please know that I have so many friends. Of course, this is what I do for a living, right? In the mental health field, and we are not immune to mental health duress. We're not. We go through the same things. The only thing that we should know more probably than the average person is what our issues and things are that upset us, that make us angry, that make us sad, because we have to have and not a perfect grip on who we are, but we have to be more self-reflected and more self-processed, right? Because we're dealing with other people. That's why we still go to therapy and counseling. So because I don't recommend anything that I have not done myself. So that's why we recommend therapy and counseling and doing these things, because it's real. It's trauma, divorce, death, catastrophic things, poverty, money stress, children, not acting the right way and getting into trouble. Parents are stressed out. These are stressful things, chemical things that happen in your body. You're trying to work with. you know? So it's important to know that it's a regular thing. There is no one in what I've read, because everyone has a brain, and a brain is an organ subject to being injured or hurt like any other part of your body and any other organ. There's no one that's not going to go through some kind of mental illness or feeling of being anxious, depressed, out of control, angry, not feeling hopeful. There's no way. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you meet a person that says no, they've never felt this way, they're lying.
Yeah, all
100%. They're lying, and I'll say it. I'll say it every day, because there's no way, because we're human.
They're either lying or they don't.
That's
they
right.
They're not able to recognize,
which is worse,
what that is. You know
right.
what I mean?
That's right.
And like they would never even consider that it was a mental episode, so they don't even know how to identify what it was, because admitting that you had a mental episode is almost like admitting a flaw or weakness.
Right.
That's why people struggle with their kids having autism or anxiety or whatever the situation is. They struggle with it because it feels like it's an indictment on them as a parent, something they didn't do. That's why you have people saying, "Oh, well, you know, my kid got a measles shot and became autistic,"
right?
Because it can't have something to do with this was just how it was going to be because of the circumstances, or in their mind it's hereditary, or I missed. There had to be an outside cause of it.
And things can be multi-determined. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, and again, I'm not a doctor, but, you know, if you eat lead paint, you're probably going to have some brain damage, right? Depending. Okay. But like breast cancer, right? There's a breast cancer gene. There are breast cancer genes, and they're finding new genes, but not every person who has the gene gets breast cancer, and not every person that has breast cancer has the gene. So things can be multi-determined. Where are you living? Are you built over landfill? You know what I'm saying? Like, I know Long Island is big hot spots, you know.
St. Louis too, yeah.
Yeah, we are built over, you know, whatever marsh. Like I don't even know. But you know, there's been a lot of movies. Yeah,
it's a landfill where, and they constantly keep saying, well, it's a fire underground that they can't put out, but it's got nuclear waste from World War II.
Right.
And it's every time you see it, it's this stuff is getting closer to this waste, and it's like, what the hell are they gonna do about it?
Yeah.
It's the most awful smell. If anybody from St. Louis, if you've ever heard the term, it smells like Earth City, they know what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the way Staten Island with the dump. What, you know, it's like a way in Staten Island. No offense, Staten Island people, but yeah. So things are multi-determined. So we
getting close to an hour. So I did have two questions.
Yes,
one of them, this last one, that might take another show.
Okay.
But so I'll ask it first.
Okay.
What's your experience that from observing is the effect that religion has on mental health and mental illness in terms of being beneficial or being detrimental?
Okay. So that's an amazing question, and that totally could be another show, which would be fantastic if we did that. So I have to say, in the typical therapist, you know, stereotype, you know, is it depends. It depends. I know people who have a very strong religious faith, and it helps them be a happy, productive, grounded person in their life. I know personally, I've worked with and know who are close to me, therapists and counselors who also do faith-based counseling. And what they do for the right client who's looking for that is priceless, right? Because everyone needs a grounding. Everyone needs for that stability. And you have to believe in something, okay? In the same respect, right? So I always feel that can be used as there's not an addendum, right? It can be used as another tool in the arsenal. So I think it's fantastic. Okay. On the flip side, okay, you could be coming from being raised or a way of life or what you feel, what you've been around socially, or the morals and that you've been taught that, it's a weakness of character, right? It's a punishment from God. All you have to do is pray. That can, I'm all for the praying, but that can interfere with, like, can you go to the doctor and pray? Can we
Right.
go to the therapist and pray? Like, I'm not even being like snarky. Like, can we just do all of that? Because I don't anything used for your healing is something that should be done.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you froze.
Total life. Okay.
You
Okay.
froze.
Okay. He grew up Jehovah's Witness. Okay. And then he left the church. Okay. He was telling me a lot of stuff that, a lot of problems, a lot of beliefs and views, and now it's hard for him to be in society, and he's like relearning certain things, and we're talking about why is he uncomfortable around people and why does he doubt himself, and what, because that's been ingrained in him. Right now, maybe if you're, and no offense to Jehovah's Witnesses, one of the most kindest, most wonderful people in the world that I know, someone from my ex-husband's family, Jehovah's Witness, and I think he's the most beautiful human being ever. But they're thinking, what they're preaching, is healthy. You know what I'm saying? Is the way it should be. And I can see it having a detrimental effect. So it really does depend. And it also depends on you. You may think this religion is great, but you can also think that it's not. But I think a lot of people, if they grow up with a very strong spiritual background, if they're finding it's not working for them, they feel very guilt-ridden to stay in it. So it depends on what is the religion doing for you. Is the religion that you're following making you have negative self-talk and judging yourself and chastising yourself? Or is it giving you hope and comfort and connection? So I think those are the questions, but I don't know if that's answered the question, but it's really like, what does it do for you? You know what I'm saying? Eating a lot of fruit a day is good, but if you're a diabetic, you can't just eat 5 apples. You know what I'm saying? It depends on what applies to you.
Yeah, so. And I think that definitely should be explored in its own show.
Yeah.
Even when I came up with, I was like, man, maybe I should wait. And we talk about that potential
and we
show.
We would want some religious experts,
like a pastor or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And then my last question is, what, I guess, are there setbacks to acknowledging mental illness or a mental situation? Because, we talked about some of the benefits. Are there possible setbacks that people should look to overcome or kind of put in perspective as they get ready to come forward with whatever their particular issue is and addressing it?
Possible setbacks maybe. I don't view it as a pro and con kind of a thing. It's a great question, though.
And I guess
a setback could
be. So what would be viewed as a setback?
Right. What would be viewed as a setback? Okay. So DMG, you're my dad, and I'm telling you that I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to counseling, and you're like, what are you, crazy? You're just, you're just weak. I had it really bad. And, so maybe your family's not going to be accepting of it. Okay. Maybe the people around you don't believe in it. And then they're going to make you feel worse for going, and you're going to feel judged. Okay. So the people around you. So, therapy's great because, you don't have to tell anybody going. You just go. So it could be, know your audience. So you may deal with some kickback from the people around you that don't necessarily believe in it. And a lot of times the people that love us, they can't separate, you know what, that's not for me, but I support you and I'm going to be positive. They're going to spew the negative. It's going to be like a knee-jerk reaction. That's one setback. There are times I have heard that people getting into, and there's ways around this, people getting into the police department, the military, whatever, if they've gone to therapy, sometimes it's, I can't believe it happens, but I believe it. Certain people have told me things were held against them, like in like your history, you know what I'm saying, in your medical history. People thought, like, in the court, in a custody battle, if a parent was on medication, it was, oh, you're going to lose custody. But it really could also be that you're going to gain custody because you're doing what you need to do to take care of yourself. You'll lose custody if you're acting as an unfit parent without the medicine. Right. And again, there's no simple answer. It's a case by case basis. Downside, I'll tell you one downside. Definitely. So what'll happen is, from time to time, is you'll go to counseling or therapy, same thing. I use them interchangeably. And you might leave and you might not feel so great. You might feel sad. You might feel upset. You might remember things that you had forgotten because you're bringing up old pain and trauma. So, but that bringing that up, it's healing. Right. So be aware, right? So people will say, I don't really want this. This isn't helping, or this makes me feel worse, or this. That can happen. But if you expect it, right? It's like when you break your leg. Okay, you're going to be in this much pain for this much time, or you have a burn. Okay, it's going to look like this. It's going to look like that. We're expecting it to look this horrible way. It means you're on the road to recovery. So knowledge is power when it comes to that. But I have never been in contact with anyone that they went into counseling and at the end they say it ruined my life and it made everything worse. That's never happened. I personally, I can't say that either. I don't know anyone who ever says that, but it can be work. It can be work, but work that you're in charge of, work that you're in control of. It's very empowering to realize, like, oh, this is a certain situation that makes me feel a certain way my whole life. Oh, I don't have to feel that way about it. This is a certain behavior that I partake in because of my thinking and feelings. Oh my God, I don't have to feel this way. I don't have to think this way. I don't have to act this way anymore. It's so empowering.
Hey, y'all, sound check real quick. How do I sound now?
You sound beautiful now.
Yeah, see, I figured it out.
Okay.
There's a constant thing blocking. So it's a permission thing blocking my mic. So I don't sound popping no more, right?
No.
Yeah, see that? I say, yo, I'm determined. All this money.
Voice in full effect now.
All this money I paid for this mic, I'm going to use it today. No, just go ahead,
anyway. So I hope that shed some light on those questions. If people want to talk, further, they can, definitely message back, and I can reach out to them if they, they leave, their email or, whatever, to talk more about that. But those are things we can definitely bring up. And those are important questions because people really don't know, and when we look at something new, it's like, all right, I'm going to climb Mount Everest. Okay. What are the pros? what are the cons? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what we're like. And that's an important question. So that's good.
Yeah. And I think Andre has a pastor friend who he does some content with. And I think he might be a good guest to have on for that. You know, what are the pitfalls of religion in terms of addressing your mental health, and how does religion help you in your mental health journey? So that'll be a good person to kind of have.
I think that'll be a great conversation, because I think there's a diametric opposition going. I feel like I've said this to Christina before. I feel like as a psychiatrist or a psychologist, if you believe in God, then you're selling snake oil to your to the person you're adding therapy to, because God tells you, I know the beginning of the end. It's all written.
Yeah.
The Quran says your life story is written from birth till the end, right? So it's like, it's God's plan.
Right. All of this is God. I tell people I got a presentation. It's like 60 slides, and I just haven't had the energy to do it. But if the biblical narrative is true,
right,
in regards to God knowing our story from beginning to end, and I got 20 scriptures to back that up, then God is a white supremacist.
Yeah. Well, you know,
because if he's in control of everything, then we look at the condition of indigenous people around the globe. This was his plan. So, like, we even down to the whole salvation thing, we got indigenous people who have never heard the word Jesus, and if they don't worship Jesus, then they're going to hell. So
what happens? And I know we can't totally go into it here, but then what is, and again, I'm not the biblical scholar, right? So what about the free will? So why would God give free will if it's his plan anyway? Are those things like, is it like judge lest not ye be judged or whatever,
right.
But then it's like but then people condemn homosexuality, but you're not supposed to judge, but you're supposed to condemn homosexuality. Like, they're very opposite. So I wonder, like,
didn't God know they were going to be homosexuals though?
Right, 100%. Exactly.
And that's the question at hand. If God knows our story from beginning to end, then where does free will come in at? Because I don't even think God has free will, because if he knows Dre, every step of Dre's life,
right,
and then and he changes his mind, then he didn't know it in the first place. If he changes his mind about the direction he wants to send Dre in, he didn't know it in the first place. So he has to be a slave to that knowledge, that omni knowledge that he has. He's a slave to it. He can't have free will over that. Otherwise, he didn't know it. And then he ceases to be God. So either way it goes, free will does not exist if what we're told in the biblical narrative is true.
I'm gonna say this. Let me know if I still am I popping yet?
No, you're good.
Right. So I'm gonna say this, right? So God in itself goes against all the laws of nature, right? So with that being said, I was once mentally ill because I believed in God. Now, I'm not taking a shot at anyone that believes in God, right? But if you look at everything that you do in your life, it goes against the laws of nature. Me and Christina talk about this all the time. If I'm on a date with one of Andre's angels, or let's just say Christina, right? Let's just say the moon is at 30, the earth is at its exact tilt of 30 plus
never
degrees.
Dated.
Right, we never dated. I'm just saying the moon, the earth is at its perfect tilt, right?
Right.
The moon is at riptide, right?
That's right.
And she
very
says,
specific
Andre,
circumstances.
Right. And she says, Andre, I'm gonna take you out to your favorite restaurant, the Chitlin Shack, so we can get something to eat.
Oh my God.
And she wears this skimpy dress. And she says, I don't care what you wear, right? There will be no cookies and vagina, right? Okay, no problem. I say, I have no problem with that. But if I'm attracted to her physically, my elevator will still rise to the 12th floor. In my case, the second
Absolutely.
floor, right? And but in biblical terms, that is lust, right?
Right.
Hence why in the Quran or in those countries, women wear the full hijab where you just see
So
their
So
yeah,
eyes.
so you can't love someone.
is the lust the feeling, or the lust is the acting on the feeling?
Listen,
No,
if it's
if we go off of what
both,
the Bible says, it's both.
it's
Okay.
Because
both, right? Because
he
you're
breaks it
going,
down.
you saw something, I saw something, my
Yeah,
body reacted to it. So
right.
naturally I'm lusting. It's like putting a steak in front of a dog, right?
Yeah, they're gonna salivate.
There you go. So the point I'm making is when you look at God and you look at whether it be Quran, biblical, or Torah, it goes against the laws of nature. It kind of does, right? Because fate, like you say, fate versus destiny,
Mm-hmm.
and I know the beginning of the end. I am the alpha and the omega, right?
Right.
Because it goes against the laws of
Uh,
nature.
Yeah.
are the pastors and the religious people that we would have, are they biblical scholars, or no? Is that something different?
In their mind, they are.
In their mind, but not necessarily. It's so a biblical scholar could be somebody like Andre. It is for if you look at the word scholar, Andre is a biblical scholar.
I'm
Or
a
your
But if,
biblical scholar.
or Andre's Black Israelite
Okay,
friend?
she talking about your friend. She talking about Cap. She talking about our
or
captain,
Captain K,
Captain K,
but somebody like
Eugene. Eugene is a
yeah,
biblical scholar. Now, the difference is I understand that what I said to you earlier, Christina, as the thinker thinks, the prover shall prove, right?
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
if a person, I never get the time. The first time I talked to Eugene was on Elijah's show. And I said, well, I said to Eugene, Noah's Ark is nothing but man. So when people say, oh, we found remnants of a ship on a mountain, where do
oh,
mountains come from? It comes from below the ocean surface.
Mm-hmm.
Tectonic plates go like this. Mountain, correct? Right? This
correct.
is why when you have a earthquake, the epicenter will be different from the actual place of the earthquake, right?
Yes.
Because this is where you get New York City from. Why do you think you have limestone and gray stone in Manhattan? Because it's the estuary, right? The Hudson River. You have
So they found that boat, that ark, whatever, like it was someplace else and brought over, or it
the
was
people listen once again, as the thinker thinks, the proof shall prove. So if you find a piece of a boat on a mountain, you're not thinking scientifically that
no.
that
You're
can be.
thinking at one time there was water there.
Thank you.
That's what you're
Thank you.
thinking,
Not
right?
understanding that the mountain came from below the water.
Well, there's a way of there's terms for that, like the way of inducing or deducing or certain types of knowledge. It's like correlation does not imply causation. You know what I
but you
mean? Like,
can't tell a believer that though, right?
no,
This is
no.
why I say
Well, that's what faith
it is a
is.
form of, right. It is a
Believing in the
form of
absence of proof.
mental illness, right? Because man would rather have a cup of faith, right, than a bucket of truth.
Yeah, but if we're out there calling someone religious,
Right.
that's a mental illness, we're gonna, we're not giving our message that we want to give.
Okay, let me explain something to you. It's nothing wrong. Listen, even though some of my better friends,
Mm-hmm.
let me not, even though I, okay, even though people that I care about
Mm-hmm.
believe in a God, it is a mental illness, but guess what? I'm fine with that because I was once mentally ill, right? So
Mm-hmm.
meaning just because, how can I say this? Okay. So let me tell you this story, right? When I was in high school, I used to clean the backyard of my mom's house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a squirrel one time jumped over the fence and it kicked the rake out my hand and it started cursing me out.
What?
And I used to tell my teacher in earth science class, like, yo, there's a squirrel. His name is Rodney. He uses profanity. He drinks like a sailor, right? And and you know, he curses me out and I can't seem to sweep. And this really happened. And you know what he said to me? Andre, you're crazy. That's impossible. I said, but you believe a snake walked up to two people and told them to eat fruit off a tree.
Oh, man. Okay.
So what I'm telling you is, if you're going to ignore one side of it.
DMG said the system crashed.
How does it? Is we hold on? It can't be on my side, right?
I'm still here, yeah.
And it can't be because Amir is. I guess he took offense with me saying belief is a mental illness, belief in God. But technically, if Christina, you know this, amongst the higher ranking psychologists and psychiatrists, they'll tell you it's somewhat of a mental illness because it is something that is permeated. Listen, I
don't think they're gonna do. I don't think they're calling it mental illness the way we're talking about what a mental illness is.
What I'm saying is mental illness because why? You omit logic and put in place what you choose to believe.
But people believe all types of things, but it's how are they functioning within those beliefs?
Once again, if I told what I told my teacher, right? And he had to concede to that because he was a Catholic earth science. He once said in class, amongst my colleagues, I'm crazy. Because I am an earth science teacher. So usually earth science, you go with the history of, not the history.
Evolution.
You go to the Big Bang. You go to the age of the universe, which most people say is 13 billion years. You go to radioactive, right? Half-lives. All of these things go against what? Right? It goes against your divine creation story.
Yes.
Right? So that's what I'm saying. So I could be crazy because I am crazy. So I am crazy because I happen not to believe in a divine creation. I am on the side of science, right? Or the side of logic or testing and proving, right? Because when I was a believer, and I used to really, I know my Bible backwards and forwards. It's like I studied the Quran. But when you get out of that mindset and you get into more of logical thinking, listen, I've heard some of the stuff you hear at times, you be like, man, right? But I'm mature enough to understand me talking to a believer is only me talking to myself 8 years ago. So that's fine. I can be considered crazy. Listen, to my believers and my family that believes in the deities or into their religion, I am crazy. And that's fine.
So do you think that believers are not rational overall in their life? Not I'm not talking about in that belief, because I know some very level-headed, rational people who have a strong faith in Jesus or whatever.
Okay. Once again, it goes against
or
the
in the
laws,
Torah or whatever.
Right, exactly. It goes against the laws. Now, one thing I ain't gonna get into that part because that would be. What I will say is, listen, we understand that your mind by nature should be rational to an extent, right? But okay, how do you rationalize? If I was just in Stockholm, right? If the Nordics have their gods, and what if they still wanted to believe in Thor, Loki, right? How do I prove my Jesus is more valid than their Thor or Loki?
I wouldn't even have any idea how to do that.
Exactly my point, right? So the rational mind will say, my God may not be as more pertinent than their God because I cannot disprove or prove mine to be more pertinent, right? If I'm in Hawaii and I tell them Jesus is Lord and they say, no, Andre, Madame Tutu, the creator of the islands of the volcanoes, how can I fight that, right? That's
You
where
can't.
this is where you're talking about rationale and logic
Well,
versus the actual belief.
just
And
like
this is
you,
why you have to learn that.
well, just like you couldn't rationalize with someone, you know, like the kamikaze fighters in World War II,
Exactly.
right? Like that was a whole other level. Or someone who, a terrorist who wants to, blow themselves up, in the name of Allah. Like you're not going to tell them.
Exactly.
You know what
Exactly
I
my
mean?
point, right?
You're not.
So
People aren't going to just be like, "Oh, I'll do that." They don't have that same belief. That's not happening.
right. And let me ask you a question. And this is why I want to recant that it's a mental illness. But what I will say is this. Because I only reason why I'm recanting it, because I don't want conflict. I don't want people to think I'm bashing
Right.
religion. I would be a hypocrite because I was once religious. Now, was that through proximity of my mommy and daddy and their right, of course. But I understood when I was a kid, to the point where I wouldn't use profanity, to the point where I vowed not to have premarital sex. I was really into it, right? But when you see things from the bigger scope, right? And you see how it's culture blended with man's natural inquisitive nature to explain things and some things that they can't, right?
Right.
So this is why when you look at Greek mythology, all of their gods had specific places in nature, right? Chronos, which gives you the word chronology, right? Which gives you time. So at the beginning of time, you have Chronos, right? And then you had Androm. And think about it, to this day, we're still under a form of Hellenism, right? Because a lot of our words we use comes from Greek words, right? From philosophy to
Right.
Andromeda, love, Cassiopeia, you know, you understand where I'm coming from? Poseidon,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So what I'm saying is look at that. Look at how each of them had a specific function within nature. And they gave it its own story or mythos to, you know what I'm saying? Same thing with, if you want to go with the Sumerians, if you want to go with the Egyptian or backslash Cometians, how all of it were just systems or mythos that describe systems of nature. You understand? So, and that's my point. So even when I went to the Nordic Museum in Stockholm, and I was just, you know me, I'm a nerd, so I want to study everybody's approach to God or what they feel is divine. Right? You see what it did for them at that time, right? Same
Right.
thing when I'm in Italy and I go through all the basilicas and the churches, right?
Right.
You notice the blending of astronomy and astrology. I can show you pictures on the floor of these cathedrals, right? They give you the elliptic cross, and then they give you the months, the days of the week, and then they give you the astrological sign to go with it, and then they, you know what I'm saying? That's kind of like when you blend it together. And that's what, like I say, belief versus rationale, right? So yeah, I'm not saying I recant the statement because I don't want to sound that I'm shunning it, because now I'm told, listen, I'm mature enough who I know my mother's a Christian to this day, and guess what? I will sit there and let her tell me about why Jesus is Lord all day long, because that's what makes, I always say, whatever makes you whole makes you that. If your deity or your belief system makes you that, so be it. But let's not ignore the lack of rationale. That's all I'm saying. If we're gonna be honest, if I just told you about the squirrel that kicked over my rake and y'all say I'm crazy, then how is the snake that convinced people to eat not
So
crazy?
so then there's mental duress and illness regarding stress and upset, and then there's the challenge of what people deem as what they believe in. Does that make sense and is rational? So
Say again.
meaning like there's mental illness, stress, and then there's so you can be irrational, stressed out, but
Correct.
someone else can consider your beliefs irrational if
Right.
they're religious beliefs, because they can't prove it or not prove it.
Right.
But then they would say, well, that's faith.
You know, once again, one of my favorite books, right? Prometheus Rising. As the thinker thinks, the prover will prove. He said, what's holding up the earth? She said, a turtle. What's holding up that turtle? Another turtle. What's holding up that turtle? Another turtle, right? The Kybalion tells you all is thought. Once you commit to that thought, right, then you are, like, it's similar to what DMG said, a slave to that thought. And that's fine. I'm a slave to my thought process at this moment.
Right.
Who knows? You might call me 3 weeks from now, and I might say, sister, could you come with me to church, Christina? let me put oil on your head, sister, right?
we have
So,
a better chance of me calling you say, let's go to church.
Yeah. But I will say that at this point in my life. But listen, sometimes I am totally transparent. Sometimes on a Sunday, whether I'm working or not, I might turn on my church. I see my church go live on Facebook, my old church when and I turn on, listen.
Yeah.
These were once my frenemies, and a lot of them weren't really friends. We were just in church, and they would pick on Andre because he actually knew the Bible and he was the nerd, and now they're preachers, which is hilarious.
You know what?
But,
there's no like detriment, I don't think. Well, it depends on if how gullible are you, right? But I don't think there's detriment in listening to something. You know what I'm saying?
No,
everything you listen to.
I'm mature enough to understand that's where I was at in my life, right?
Right.
And more importantly, there's nothing more inspirational than gospel music if you listen to it,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
Listen, even though I could sit in a congregation and pick out fallacies when a preacher says something in the Bible or blah, 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 but I can also tune my mind into listening to the overall message. Right, I don't have to worry about a lot of stuff that's being said,
right,
as far as on the dogmatic state, but the inspirational side that person may need to get through the week.
That's what I found when I've gone to different Baptist churches,
right.
And non-denominational churches, Baptist, and the Brooklyn Tabernacle too. That was amazing, and inspirational.
Yeah,
like
that's what it is.
There was no, Roman Catholic Church, I was baptized Roman Catholic, to me it was always very, and that's just me, not that I'm very religious, whatever, but very sad. Like I just found it heavy, but, more of the Baptist was more, uplifting. Someone had a question I saw.
My man Amir, right? You can read it and see.
Would you say something that is unjustifiable and circular is illogical? Would you say something that is unjustifiable and circular is illogical? Is that to me or is that to you, Andre? Either one? Okay. Would I say? I would say it would have to depend on what it would be. You can have someone be very tangential and not speak coherently in a conversation, not speak rationally, put things together that don't make sense. And then perhaps other things are more of a conversation of faith. And then it depends who's partaking in them. So no, I don't think everything, I have to look at that qualitatively as a mental health profession. So when I think of that, I think of people that are tangential, meaning like they don't connect things well in conversation. It's like half the conversation is in their head and half the conversation is with you. You're not quite sure what they're talking about. They're not making any logical sense. Not that what they're saying I don't believe in, but what they're saying doesn't make sense. Logical sense, not like a belief sense. Andre, you there? Well, I don't know where everybody is, but anyway, thank you for tuning in to our show. Andre, you there? No. Okay. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. Any other questions? Please message DMG or Andre. Oh, I was just closing out the show. I thought you got knocked off also.
Listen, man. It's New Year's and I had to get my Uber Eats, man.
On New Year's?
Listen, I'm starved. I haven't eaten anything. I've ate oatmeal. I think I ate oatmeal at 1 o'clock, and then I worked out for an hour.
Oh my
and a
God, you
half.
must be starving. But anyway, I don't know if you want to answer that question. And then, did you hear my response?
The reason why, Brother Amir said the reason why I asked because the general reliability of our senses, induction, and unfathomable. He said unjustifiable. Of nature, this belief as being external world are properly basic beliefs. I think, I don't know if I send you the link, Amir, if you want to like come on, it would probably be better if you ask instead of rereading it, because I understand what you're trying to convey, but it's also loaded, right? So, I mean, if you want me to send you the link real quick and you can ask the question, like that, and then you know, and maybe just let me know, and I'll send it to you real quick.
Andre, let me ask you a question. Is there any cutoff for anyone who wants to ask a question or make a comment, or no?
No, I mean, as long as this is your show, so as long as you're, let me know if I'm popping, please.
No, you're
right.
smooth. You're good.
All right,
You're
so
clear.
you know, if you, you know,
Because
what
I
is
don't
that? Hold
have
on.
I don't have the website hooked up yet, so I want to be able to like communicate with people.
Oh yeah.
So
Okay,
would
hold
I
on. He can
check
hop
back?
on. I'm about to send you the. I'm about to
Okay.
pin the link in the. Let me see. Let me see. Let me pin the guest. Invite guest. Copy. Let me see. Give me a second. Hold on. I'm doing this on my phone, y'all. So
Go ahead.
let me see.
I am tired.
Oh Lord, you ain't tired. Hold on, I'm gonna send it.
Okay.
Hey Amir, I'm gonna send it to. I'm gonna shoot. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna try to. He didn't post the. Hey Christina, you actually got the link, right?
Yes, I did.
Mo, I'm gonna send you this link, right? And post it into the chat, Mo. I'm gonna send you this link right now. Post it into the chat, Mo.
Mo Mello Mo?
No, that's
Oh.
Mellow Moonchild. Hold on.
Oh, I have to reach out to
Hold
her. Okay.
on, let me give it to Mo real
Shout
quick.
out to Mello.
Yeah, y'all, that's next week for y'all, hopefully.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh my God, I gotta get on that.
Hey Mo, post that link into the Hey Mo, post that link into the chat so Amir could jump on. Cause like I said, I was doing this from my phone. But yeah, hey Amir, I just put it in the chat for Mo. She's gonna repost it, and then you can just jump on the link and then you can ask Christina that question.
Speaking of religion, I have my rosary beads with my evil eyes. I'm not even sure if you're supposed to
Oh
do
Lord,
that,
have mercy,
but
Jesus.
I love this.
Oh my
And
God.
my crystals, you know.
Chakra
really
princess.
which are usually mutually exclusive.
Hey Mo, did you get it? I put it. Hey Mo, did you get it? I put it in your I put it in your go to your Facebook Messenger, Mo. I copied the link onto it, so. Where is you at? I don't know what she doing. Just give us 1 second, Amir. But I gave it to Mo. It's in your joint. Let me remove myself for 1 second. Hey Mo, did you get it? Wait, let me go and check. Yeah, it's in your Hey Mo, it's in your DM on Facebook. Because I definitely want to hear his question out. Especially Christina might have
Yeah, I'd love to hear the question.
yeah. You got me crunching. Hold on. You say you did and it's not showing. Hold on. Hold on, Mo. Because I sent that link. Yeah, you saw it. You don't have that link, Mo? It's right. It showed that you read it. Oh, you saying you posted it, but it's not showing. That's odd. Hold on. You said you posted it, but it's not showing. That's odd because you usually could post it. Shoot. Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Hold on. Maybe I could do it. The only way I could do it, I gotta go. I'm gonna post it. Hey, Amir, I'm gonna post it on YouTube right now myself. Give me a second. I'll do it myself. Remove from stream. Solo layout. Exit solo layout.
Yo,
Hello.
hello. How y'all doing?
Hello. Hi.
Yeah. Uh. Oh, here, Nickel. Oh. But yeah. Well, I mean, it was primarily towards Dr. Jesus. The question. Yeah.
Go right ahead.
Yeah. Cause well, he was saying. I may have misheard. Maybe you could correct me, but I think. Did he say that belief in God is illogical? If I heard him correctly, or
Um
Hold on. Let me get my earphones. Let me get my
yeah, let him
earphones.
address that.
Hold on. Let me get my earphones so I can hear you, bro. All right, there you go. Say that. Say what you have to say now. But towards me, what?
correct me if I'm wrong. Were you saying
Mm-hmm.
somebody like belief in God is illogical, or did I
Is
misheard?
for the listen for the most part. Let me ask you. So obviously, I take it you believe in God, correct?
Yeah,
Right? Or okay. So you don't see that a lot of depending which is your religion or your faith.
Christianity.
All right, so you're a Christian. So let me ask you a question. You don't think that do you believe that everything that is said in the Bible happened the way it was said, or do you believe it's parables and metaphoric and esoteric, or do you believe this stuff actually happened?
Depends on the book and its genre.
Okay. Do you believe in the talking snake?
No, I mean, Genesis is primarily etiological and primarily, particularly the first two chapters, it's primarily cosmic. It's a temple cosmology from an ancient Near East.
Right. So that's my point, right? So if you heard me say, what did I say? I said the Greeks, the Nordics, the Egyptians, right? What did they do? They had cosmology, right? They had different archetypes that represented nature, correct? So if you say what you just said, right? Why? Because logically, you would think that a snake is not speaking, correct?
Yeah.
That's
Well,
my point. It
well,
goes
well,
against
well,
rationale. That's all I'm saying. You understand what I'm saying? Now you have the right in the poetic justice. That's why I took back when I said mental illness. But you also do understand that there are a plethora of people that believe in a talking snake, right?
yeah. The ones that I'm aware of primarily of the young Earth creationist variety, and just to clarify, I am not a young Earth creationist, so yeah.
Okay, that's once again, see, then we're breaking into sex, right? Right? We're breaking into to schools of thought. If you think about it, there's so many different, just like there's Mohammedans, and just like there's Sunni and Shiite, right? Of different people of different interpretation of the Quran, you have so many different interpretations and um, understandings of biblical texts, right? But if you say to me that you don't necessarily believe in a talking snake, I have to kind of attribute that to rationale and logic. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, basically, the idea of a talking animal is illogical.
Exactly
Mhm.
my point. That's
Yeah.
all I was saying.
Well, yeah.
That's why you heard me say I was once in that school of thought, right? So I have to adhere and respect it because I wouldn't want no one to call me crazy. That's why I recanted the statement of actual mental illness. But I did say though, it does goes against the laws of nature in most rationale. That's all I'm saying, right? So then
Yeah,
it
I got
becomes a choice if you're gonna believe, right, in something that goes against logic and rationale. You see what I'm saying?
you. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
The Just a little thing about the last part, though, particularly about the different sects and different interpretations.
Okay.
That's mainly a diff. Yeah, that's mainly a hermeneutical issue, interpretation issue. So how do you filter out which one is which? That's where you would want to treat each one as a hypothesis, and the hypothesis that has better priors and better expectation of the evidence given that would be the most probable interpretation.
Well,
And
the word hermeneutics itself, like you say, means interpret. It's lame. It's it's a higher version of the word interpretation, or is it another word, right? So my thing is, how do you hypothesize that, right? When you're okay, how do you hypothesize? Like, so how would you hypothesize that story, right, into making it make logical sense?
pretty much the same way science usually does it. Like you have certain phenomena, and what you're positing is explanations to account for it. And
Okay,
you and you'll have a plethora of hypotheses, basically
right.
hypothesis. However, while you have many of them, not all of them are probable. Uh, the probability, well, and this kind of goes into sort of a Bayesian approach. Basically, the probability of the hypothesis given the evidence. However, which one is most probable is the one that has a higher prior probability, which is based on background knowledge, background data, particularly like where the text originates and the surrounding environment, culture, etc., the theological motifs of the area, etc. Um,
So, but that's more into, you're talking about more into cultural, then you go into syntax, and you're going into, like you said, those areas in that specific time and geographical locale, right? But how do you
you're also
hypothesize that?
considering that. You're also considering grammar and syntax as well. In
That's what I
regards to
should say. So how does that is able to be hypothesized? Like, because usually the goal is with making the hypothesis, right, is to kind of get to, like you say, the best answer or the most um, fathomable answer, right? So my thing is, if it's cosmology or if it's, I don't want to say mythos, but whatever. It how it's like when you're a child, right? Like when someone tells you one story and another tells you another story, it could be the same story, but like you say, ultimately there will be a slight change in delivery or interpretation, right? Once again, that's neither here nor there, but what I will say is, for the person that does believe in the talking snake, or who believes that one of these animals were able to fit on the ark, right? They're kind of going against logic or rationale, and that's their choice, right? um some people, listen, everyone has the right to decide to believe or not believe, right? Or to be more like me, who say, that doesn't really add up. Or the person that says, listen, God can do anything, right? That's usually the answer, right? So yeah, I feel you. That's why I took back my statement. But I stand on, for the people that do believe in a talking donkey or a talking snake, right? Or believe in a certain a certain story or parable or cosmology, you're going against certain rationales that is embedded in your natural brain. You know what I'm saying? Now we can agree to disagree with that. Doesn't have to be who's right and who's wrong. But I think we kind of understand that if I told you I had a talking snake, you would be like, Andre, you're crazy. Unless I showed and proved that I had a talking snake, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and that's all I'm saying, bro. That's it. And I know it's getting kind of late, so I don't want to keep uh Christina got to go and wash her feet and get her curls done. You know how women are, brother. You know she.
Christina, Christina, I am so sorry for keeping you this late.
No,
No,
no, no, no, no.
no,
Listen, it's
don't,
our
not
listen.
at all. Not at
I'm
all.
we're
It's a
thankful. We're
pleasure.
thankful for you tuning in
That's right.
and having this conversation. So that's what it's here for, right? That's what I wanted
Absolutely.
to give Christina a platform as a therapist, to be able to talk to anybody on any level about anything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And we have it looks like we have definitely two shows in the making, one with how religion affects,
The brain.
mental health and the brain,
Mm-hmm.
and as well as with Mellow Moonchild
Yeah, we still got
next
to get
week.
her in.
Yeah, we still
Yeah,
got to get her in.
yeah.
Any like, is it time of day for the second show? Is that
If you subscribe, you'll see when I upload
Yeah.
the picture. But if anything, I'll have DMG also. It'll
Mhm.
probably be, what day for you works, Christina, this week? If I
I
get
think Thursdays works great.
Thursday, right? So
I'm
I can get
clear
her
on
Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah,
So let's say Thursday around 7 or 8. You know what I'm
that's
saying?
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, because when it comes to that particular subject, that uh, I've kind of been dealing with that for almost, well, roughly about a year now, and well, friend got me sucked into something, and after that, I had to do a little more reading on cults and their behavior, and
Interesting. Yes.
yeah, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, like
Now,
Alexander Stein, and I forget what her name is, two others, but yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, everything was once considered a cult if it went against what was the norm of that
Very true.
geographical, right?
Very
So
true.
even,
And
you
it was
know,
considered like heresy, right? Is that
correct,
what I'm? Yeah,
correct,
okay.
heretics, right? So,
Heretics, right?
Well,
um,
that's the modern connotation of cult. A cult back then meant something entirely different. Meant the
Okay.
treatment of the gods, or pleasing the gods,
Ah,
something within that vein.
but
got it.
But the modern usage, it
but
carries a negative
that word,
connotation.
the
Interesting.
kind of the definition you just kind of, not kind of, the definition you just said though, goes more towards ritualism
of cult, right? The ritualistic.
No. Cult. When I said cult in
Because hold on,
what
you
I mean
got
right now.
occult and then you got cult, right? And if you break both of those down, and well, we ain't gonna do that today. But yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying.
Awesome. No, I would love it if Amir could be in on that, you know, definitely in
Yeah, I
on
mean,
that
you
show.
and him
That'd be
could do. Yeah,
fantastic.
you and that could be
Because I'm
his
learning,
chance to.
I'm learning, you know, all this terminology and things from him. You know, when I think of, you know, Bible scholars, you know, I think of like when I was getting my undergrad at Hofstra University, I took a Jewish studies class from a rabbi, and we talked about the Old Testament. There was every religion and atheists and agnostics and in that room, and it was the most amazing class. And it talked about, you know, this is this passage, and this is what some people say it means, this is what some other people say it means, this is what these people believe, this is what these other people believe. Grammar is different, words were different back then, this is what it meant, this is what. So it's just it was a religious study, but it wasn't religious, it was dialogue, you know what I'm saying, which was so interesting, you know, things, you know, I learned that I would never think of, you know, like when I went to the Brooklyn Tabernacle, you know, like the emphasis on different words and things like that, you know, I didn't realize that that's part of you know, the religion and the following. And, you know, it's just, it's a very interesting thing. It's important to learn, you know, the perspectives of where people come from, you know?
Yeah. Was this a ancient Near East course or just a Jewish language
Let me
course?
think. It was at Hofstra University. I might be able to find out before next show. It was, I want to say the title was Jewish Studies.
Mm.
We
Yeah.
talked, and it was a rabbi that taught it who was amazing. Um, I'm not, I'm not sure. I would have to find out about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, because I cited that just a little bit. It's much later I came across more ancient Near East literature, and
Right.
yeah, because that's what I was saying. That's why I was referencing the hypotheses in
Right.
regards to the hermeneutics interpretation of the text. I find that hypothesis of it being more ancient Near Eastern genre, that's more probable given its background,
Got it.
given the prior. Yeah, because hypothesis is more probable. What makes a hypothesis, given the evidence, more probable is the prior probability hypothesis, and
Okay.
that would be in background data, and that's why I find the ancient Near East. That's why I find the ancient Near Eastern reading of it more probable because it better explains it. It has more accountable with the background data knowledge, like Ugaritic literature, Mesopotamian, etc. Even
That's like,
Canaan.
that's like people saying, you know, well, is it possible? Like, yeah, it's possible, but it's not probable. You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? Like yes, basically anything's possible, but probability would have it that no. You know what I'm saying? So it's, you know, there's all different, you know, degrees of that. But okay, well, I'm not sure where Andre went, but thank you, Amir. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. And we will put out more information about what the shows will be like next week. And hope everyone has a good start to 2023 and have a great evening.
Yeah, you too, Christian.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.